The auction hall was alive with laughter, clinking glasses, and smug whispers. Wealthy men in tailored suits lifted their paddles, flaunting money like it was air. In the corner, a single dad in worn boots and a faded jacket sat silently, his little boy clutching his hand. Everyone ignored him, dismissing him as if he didn't belong. But when the bidding hit its peak, he raised his hand and the entire room froze. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from. And don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The auctioneer's gavel pounded the podium, his booming voice echoing through the chandelier-lit hall. Ladies and gentlemen, the starting bid is $500,000. Hands shot up like fireworks, sleek watches flashing. Under golden lights. The whispers grew sharper, filled with arrogance. Did you see his shoes? He probably can't afford the parking fee. A woman in diamonds sneered, her husband chuckling beside her. Daniel Hayes, 37, single father of a 7-year-old boy named Ethan, tightened his grip on his son's small hand. He'd come. Not for show, not for vanity, but for a promise he made years ago. His son tugged at his sleeve. Daddy, are we really gonna try? His voice was hopeful, shaky. Daniel bent down, looked into those wide, trusting eyes and whispered, "We don't quit, buddy. Not today." The auctioneer continued, "We're talking about a rare property on Willow Creek land that carries history and legacy. Who's ready to take it?" The crowd erupted. 600, 750, 800. The numbers climbed. The rich laughed and cheered, waving their paddles like it was a game. Daniel sat still, ignored, ridiculed. A man in a slick suit leaned over and mocked, "You sure you're in the right place, pal? This isn't a garage sale." Daniel didn't flinch. He simply held his son closer. Because this wasn't about status, it was about a legacy his father once lost, and a kindness Daniel swore he would repay to the man who had given him a second chance. Years ago. The bidding roared past $1 million. Gasps filled the room as one man shouted, 1.5. The auctioneer raised an eyebrow. "Do I hear higher?" Daniel stood, his voice calm but cutting through the chaos. 2 million. The room turned to stone. Forks froze in midair. Glasses stopped halfway to lips. Every head swiveled toward the man in the worn jacket holding his son's hand. The woman in diamonds choked on her champagne. He's bluffing. He doesn't have that. But Daniel's gaze was steady, his jaw set like iron. He raised his paddle with a hand that didn't shake. Ethan whispered, trembling but proud, "Daddy, you did it." And for the first time that night, silence gripped the hall. The hush that swept across the auction hall was heavier than the velvet curtains drawn across its tall windows. A single voice, calm yet commanding, had pierced the arrogance of wealth, and it didn't come from a man in silk or leather. It came from Daniel Hayes, a single father in scuffed boots and a jacket with frayed cuffs, holding his son's tiny hand. The auctioneer blinked, his smile faltering. 2 million? He repeated, almost in disbelief. Daniel's paddle was still raised, unwavering. His eyes, dark and steady, didn't blink as the spotlight found him. His little boy Ethan clutched his sleeve tighter, his face glowing with pride and fear. Whispers rippled like wildfire through the crowd. Who does he think he is? He can't back that up. This has to be a stunt. At the front, a slick businessman in his 40s, Harrison Cole, known for snapping up properties just to bulldoze them, smirked and stood. 2.2 million, he barked, his voice oozing smugness. The auctioneer snapped out of his daze, hammer lifted. "We have 2.2. Do I hear higher?" Daniel's jaw tightened. He remembered his father's trembling voice on his hospital bed, telling him, "Son, if you ever get the chance to bring back the land they stole from us, do it. It's not about me, it's about giving Ethan roots, giving him a future." Daniel raised his paddle higher, his voice cut through the jeers. 3 million. Gasps shot through the room like shattered glass. People twisted in their seats, eyes wide. The woman in diamonds slapped her husband's arm, hissing, "He can't have that kind of money. This is ridiculous." But the auctioneer's eyes gleamed. "Now, 3 million. Do I hear 3.1? Harrison laughed, though a nervous twitch betrayed him. 3.2. Daniel's heart pounded, but he didn't blink. His son's small hand squeezed his, steadying him. Daniel lifted his chin. 4 million. A silence fell that no amount of champagne could cut through. The chandelier lights seemed to burn brighter, catching every stunned expression in the hall. The auctioneer, struggling to mask his shock, boomed. 4 million on the table. Going once, Harrison shot up red-faced. 4.5. The room exploded in gasps and murmurs. Ethan's lip trembled, but Daniel leaned down, whispering, "Trust me, buddy. We're not walking away." His paddle lifted again, calm as steel. 5 million. The room went wild. A woman dropped her fork. Someone in the back muttered, "He's insane." Others laughed, trying to brush it off as spectacle, but their voices quivered. Harrison's smug grin cracked. Sweat beaded his forehead. He adjusted his cufflinks, glaring at Daniel like a wolf circling prey. 5.1. Daniel didn't move, didn't flinch. The only sound was his son's quiet breathing beside him. Then he lifted the paddle again. His voice carried across the hall like thunder. 6 million. The air seemed to vanish from the room. Even the auctioneer paused, blinking as if unsure if he'd heard correctly. Harrison sat down slowly, his face pale, his jaw clamped shut. His wife tugged at his arm, whispering furiously, but he didn't respond. He knew he'd been outmatched, not by money, but by conviction. The auctioneer slammed the gavel. Sold for $6 million. The sound cracked through the hall. Like lightning, the crowd erupted in disbelief. Some sneered, others whispered in awe, but no one laughed anymore. Every head turned, watching the man they'd mocked stand tall with his son's hand in his. Ethan tugged at Daniel's sleeve. "Daddy, we really did it." Daniel knelt, brushing his son's hair back. His voice trembled, but it was steady enough for the boy to believe every word. "We did, son. We kept our promise." Behind him, the whispers grew. How could he afford it? Where did the money come from? Is he some hidden investor? But Daniel didn't answer them. He didn't need to. The truth was simple, but powerful. Years of sacrifice, working double shifts, selling everything he didn't need, and most of all the kindness of a man who once took him in when he was at rock bottom. That man had left Daniel with more than just shelter. He'd left him with an opportunity. An opportunity Daniel had multiplied through grit, long nights, and relentless determination. And now, standing in a hall full of people who saw him as invisible, Daniel proved that quiet persistence could roar louder than moneyed arrogance. A woman from the catering staff approached shyly, carrying a glass of water. Her apron was stained, and her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. "Sir, I just wanted to say congratulations. Nobody in here thought you'd stand a chance." She glanced at Ethan with a warm smile, but your little boy's eyes. "I could see he never doubted you." Daniel's throat tightened. He accepted the water with a nod. "Thank you," he said softly. Then he placed the glass in Ethan's hand. "Here, champ, you first." The kindness wasn't loud, but it was felt. The boy sipped, smiling proudly, while the hall continued to buzz in disbelief. As they made their way toward the signing desk, Harrison blocked their path, his jaw clenched. "You think this makes you better than us? You think you belong here?" Daniel met his eyes without fear. "No," he said calmly. "I don't need to be better than you. I just need to keep my promises." Ethan slipped his hand back into his father's, and together they walked past the man who had mocked them minutes earlier. Behind them, the auctioneer announced the next item, but no one was listening anymore. The story of the night had already been written. A single dad, ignored and dismissed, had stunned an entire room with nothing but courage, conviction, and love for his son. And for the first time in years, Daniel felt something shift deep inside him, not just victory, but dignity. The kind his son would grow up never doubting. The crowd still buzzed as Daniel and Ethan walked toward the back of the hall, where the signing desk waited. Eyes trailed them, some filled with envy, others with curiosity, and a few with something deeper, respect. Daniel felt Ethan's hand squeeze his. The boy's voice was hushed but filled with awe. "Daddy, I've never seen everyone so quiet before. It was like the whole world stopped when you said 6 million. Daniel gave a soft smile. "Sometimes, son, the loudest voice is the one no one expects." The clerk at the desk glanced nervously at the papers. "Mr. Hayes will need your signature and proof of funds." His tone carried the same doubt the crowd had voiced moments ago, but Daniel didn't falter. He opened the leather satchel slung across his shoulder, pulling out the documents he had prepared weeks ago. Proof of wire transfer, bank verification letters, legal paperwork, all in order. The clerk's eyes widened as he flipped through each sheet. The disbelief in his expression melted into astonishment. "Everything checks out, completely." The room buzzed louder. People leaned in, whispering frantically, "He really has it." Where did he come from? No one knew his name. Until tonight. Daniel signed the papers calmly, his pen steady despite the weight of years pressing behind each stroke. When the last line was inked, the clerk stamped the file with a loud thunk. "Congratulations, Mr. Hayes. You're the new owner of Willow Creek." Ethan's face lit up like the morning sun. He threw his arms around his father's waist, his little voice muffled against Daniel's jacket. "We did it, Daddy. Grandpa's land, it's ours again." Daniel hugged him tightly, his own throat thick with emotion. He didn't let his tears fall, not here, not in front of the wolves, waiting to feast on weakness. But inside, he felt the trembling relief of a man who had fought every battle stacked against him, and finally won. As they turned to leave, Harrison Cole appeared again, his face red and bitter. "You'll regret this," he sneered. "That land is worthless. It's nothing but swamps and broken fences. You wasted everything for a fairy tale." Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't raise his voice. Instead, he crouched to his son's level, making sure Ethan heard every word. "People like him think value is only measured in dollars. But real value, son, is what you build with your own hands and who you build it for." He stood and met Harrison's glare head-on. "You wouldn't understand that." The man's wife tugged at his sleeve, hissing, "Leave it, Harrison. He won." But Harrison yanked his arm free, storming off with venom in his eyes. Daniel didn't watch him go. He bent down to fix Ethan's crooked collar. "Come on, champ. Let's get some air." Outside, the night was cool. The stars scattered across the sky like promises yet to be kept. The mansion lights from the auction hall spilled across the gravel driveway, but Daniel led his son past the luxury cars lined up like trophies. Their own old truck sat at the far end, dented, worn, and dusty. Ethan looked at it with a small frown. "Daddy, do you think people will laugh at us again because of our truck?" Daniel knelt beside him, placing a hand on his shoulder. "Let them laugh. This truck carried us through storms, across miles when we had nothing. Every scratch is a story, and you know what? Tonight, that same truck carried us to victory." Ethan's frown softened into a smile. "I like our truck then." Daniel tousled his hair. "Me too." They climbed in, the seats creaking, and as the engine rumbled to life, Daniel glanced back at the grand hall shrinking behind them. He didn't feel small anymore. Not invisible. Tonight had changed everything, but the story didn't end there. In the weeks that followed, the whispers of the auction spread like wildfire across town. People who had mocked Daniel now spoke his name with reluctant respect. Some even tried to approach him, offering partnerships or friendly advice. But Daniel remained focused. The land at Willow Creek wasn't a prize to flaunt. It was a promise to rebuild. The fields were overgrown, the fences broken, the farmhouse sagging with rot. But to Daniel, it was a canvas waiting for a future. He worked every spare hour, his hands blistered, sweat pouring down his back, and Ethan was right there beside him, holding nails, handing tools, sometimes just sitting on the fence rail, watching his father with admiration that words could never capture. Neighbors who once ignored Daniel began stopping by. An old man dropped off lumber. A widow baked pies and left them at the gate. Even the caterer from the auction hall visited with her teenage son, offering to help clear brush. "You inspired us that night," she said softly. "You reminded us what real strength looks like." For the first time, kindness didn't just flow one way, it came back to Daniel, like ripples returning to the shore. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Ethan stood on the porch of the rebuilt farmhouse, his small figure silhouetted in the golden light. "Daddy," he called, "do you think Grandpa can see this from heaven?" Daniel paused, his throat tight, and nodded. "Yeah, buddy. I think he can. And I think he's proud." The boy smiled, and in that moment, Daniel realized something deeper. The true victory wasn't the land, or the 6 million bid, or even the respect he'd earned. It was the look in his son's eyes, the unshakable belief that his father was a man who never broke a promise. Months later, the town held another auction. Daniel didn't go this time. He didn't need to. But whispers spread that people looked around, expecting to see him half in awe, half in fear of what he might do next. For Daniel, though, the noise no longer mattered. He had reclaimed more than just land. He had reclaimed dignity, legacy, and the unspoken bond between a father and son. And for Ethan, growing up watching his father stand tall against ridicule and wealth, the lesson would outlast any fortune. That true power isn't in the price you pay, but in the promises you keep. That was the night they ignored the single dad at the auction until he raised his hand and stunned the room. And in doing so, he stunned the world his son would inherit.